Good afternoon, everyone who's here today. I'm happy that members of the Climate Change Task Force, members of the media, and the listening public are with us today. We are here to make a major announcement about Bermuda's important steps to address the issue of climate change. Everyone knows that the world around us is changing, and in ways and faster than any of us have anticipated. Although future generations, our children and grandchildren, are the ones who are going to bear the real brunt of climate change, it is here with us now. The climate-related impacts are already being experienced around the world and here in Bermuda. Looking at recent events, it is evident that we are definitely experiencing unprecedented impacts around and changes around our weather patterns, seasonal conditions, and examples of this are 2023 was the second wettest year on record from when records have been produced. We've had increased flooding in some of the low-lying areas of our island, and an increasing number of major storms in the region this year we've already seen. One of which was, of course, Hurricane Ernesto, which passed directly over Bermuda earlier in the summer than in almost 30 years. And it was a direct hit. We hadn't had a direct hit that early in the year since the 1990s. The temperatures of the ocean around us are rising, and sea levels continue to change year by year. Though Bermuda's contribution to the challenge of greenhouse gases is extremely minimal, we find ourselves, like all islands around the world, on the front line of climate change. Like other islands and developing states, Bermuda is exceptionally vulnerable to climate impacts. We are, of course, in the middle of the large, vast Atlantic Ocean. So the ocean impacts us, and what changes in the atmosphere in the ocean impacts us. Our geographic isolation, small population, and limited resources increase the susceptibility to things like sea level rise, severe storms, and other environmental threats, jeopardizing critical infrastructure and other aspects of the island of Bermuda. Places like the Elif Wade International Airport and other key roadways that run over power systems and much of our coastline are at risk from severe storms, erosion, and the damage that comes from the weathering of the environment. Bermuda stands at a very critical juncture. That is the truth for us today. We must each consider how we, every citizen, every resident, how we will protect ourselves and our islands for generations to come. Change is no longer far off, it is here, right now, with us in Bermuda today. And our environment is changing. There are stresses on our environment, on the infrastructure, and this will bring challenges to us, not only socially, but economically. In response to the realities, in March of 2022, I announced on behalf of the government a commissioned comprehensive study titled Bermuda and Climate Change, Impacts from Sea Level Rise and Changing Storm Activity, in collaboration with Swift Warner International and the United Kingdom government, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, who helped and financed this particular report. This report thoroughly assesses Bermuda's vulnerabilities, highlights specific risks that we have and are real right now, relating to sea level rise and intensive storm patterns and how that will impact our environment. Today, I share this report with you and others, and we want to make sure that the public knows that this report is available to them to look at on the government portal, gov.bm/climate change. I urge everyone, and I mean every person who is living on this island, every person who cares about Bermuda, to look at this report. And please email any questions you have or concerns that you feel the report raises for you to climatechange@gov.bm, climatechange@gov.bm. The Smith-Warner report emphasizes the urgent need for a coordinated action to address the short, medium, and long-term impacts and risks. It reveals the 2,130 buildings that have been assessed, which equals 6% of all the buildings in Bermuda, and some level of risk that they may have, with up to 326 buildings classified as highly exposed. Vulnerable areas include major roadways, the Belco plant in Pembroke, our airports, and a staggering 96% of our coastal reserves, all of which need some form of protection. The Smith-Warner report also outlines recommendations. So there are solutions that we can pursue, everyone, including shoreline advancement through beach nourishment, submerged breakwaters, and strategic land reclamation. Each measure needs to be carefully designed to balance protection with environmental integrity. Moving forward, we will focus on adaptation, strengthening our ability to manage what we cannot avoid. We must fortify the infrastructure that we have and certainly build infrastructure differently going forward. And of course, we need to protect our natural resources and educate everyone in the community so that they understand what those risks are, and that will help with the effort to reduce them. And of course, to increase our resilience to the risks that we face. At the outset of this initiative, the government recognized that there was important of a coordinated and strategic approach to be taken to effectively tackle the issue of climate change. It must be a unified effort. We aim to reduce duplication across ministries and entities so that we have an enhanced approach and understanding of ongoing initiatives and leverage extensive expertise that are available here in Bermuda in a variety of sectors. To that end, the Ministry of Home Affairs some years ago established a climate change task force led by the ministry on behalf of the full government to guide the development and assessment of this critical study. The task force comprises representatives from all the key ministries and departments in the Ministry of Home Affairs and in other ministries, which are the Department of Energy, Environmental and Natural Resources, the Ministry of Public Works, and for the Cabinet Office, the Department of Planning. The task force also benefits from the expertise of the Bermudian meteorologist, Dr. Mark Gishard, who used to work for the Bermuda Weather Service and is currently the Chief Operating Officer of the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, known as BIOS. This task force will develop a detailed action plan based on the findings of the climate study with key priorities. 1, public education and outreach. The government will launch an awareness campaign to engage and foster understanding within the community. It will include obtaining valuable feedback from private sector, environmental groups, and other government departments. Strategic planning and infrastructure protection. A dedicated project manager will be recruited to oversee climate-related initiatives as part of this task force objectives, guided by multiple sector group, the Climate Change Task Force. We will prioritize initiatives to strengthen vulnerable parts of our infrastructure and, where necessary, reallocate high-risk assets. Legislative policy and adoption. We will ensure both the Bermuda Plan and the Bermuda Building Codes are amended to include consideration for climate resilience. There's already an effort to ensure that the building code accommodates conservation and efficiency measures, all in our effort to respond to the issues around climate change and making Bermuda more efficient, even as we still deal with these issues. And of course, nature-based solutions. We will continue investing in the ecosystem and the restoration of that ecosystem and the role we play to support the ecosystem, such as reestablishing mangroves where they have been decimated because of development or just because of natural deterioration. And of course, the protection of our coral reefs. We already have a substantial coral reef restoration plan that will continue, and we'll be given more resources where required. These natural defenses, both our coral reefs and mangroves, are crucial to how we address climate change and ensure nature-based solutions are also at the forefront of what we do. These natural defenses are crucial for reducing storm surges and erosion while preserving our biodiversity. One thing we learned from the study is the crucial role that our reef system plays with the protection of our land environment. It is very important that we ensure long-term coral reef health and of the marine environment around our coral reefs, whether it be ensuring that our fish stocks are plentiful because the presence of life around the reef keeps the reef alive, and certainly contributes to the strengthening of the biodiversity in the area around us. Bermuda has a unique opportunity here to adapt and lead. We can do both at the same time. As a global hub for climate risk and insurance expertise, which is well known, we are well positioned to serve as a model for resilience globally, particularly to other small island states that also confront the issues that we face. Our success will depend on, frankly, us all deciding to work together at every level, locally and, of course, internationally. We will continue to work closely with the United Kingdom and other overseas territories and other countries to secure the resources needed to address this real challenge that we as a country face. But we're not alone. Other islands like us are facing the same issues, the same questions, and looking for the same answers. And again, I urge everyone to read the report. The report is going to be up on the website, which I said, which is www.gov.bm/climate change, and to send any questions to the email address climatechange@gov.bm, but I'll even add, you can send it to myself if you wish, directly. whroban@gov.bm, if you wish, you can send it directly to me as a minister. I will happily receive them and make sure that you get an answer directly. In closing, let us acknowledge and understand that climate change is really one of the key defining issues of this era that we live in. We know this is what's being said internationally for large countries and especially for small countries like Bermuda that are islands in the middle of the Atlantic. We are a large ocean state, but we are small, and those impacts are real. Our landscape and infrastructure will be impacted. And we must just basically know this is our home. Most of us have nowhere to go. And those are people who want to be here, and we want to ensure that we all have long-lasting generations of life. So it's important that we cherish our home and protect our home and do what's necessary to ensure that Bermuda lasts long, long into the future. And by acting now, we can build a more resilient island, safeguarding our natural beauty, which many people come here to experience, and that's why we're all here. Our heritage, our history, as a settlement, as a community, and of course, all that is important because it will help shape the future. This effort must be about the government, business, organization, and of course, all of our. It will affect every single one of us. We must work together to address the risks. I assure you that myself and my colleagues are committed to working with everyone, irrespective of their persuasion, to address these issues. We must decide to adapt, we must protect, and we must, of course, preserve our island for generations to come. Thank you very much, everyone, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Minister. We now welcome questions from Sekou from the Royal Gazette.
Good afternoon, Minister Roban. I understand that this is obviously going to be a long-term process, both with regards to restoring natural resources and just keeping an eye on any infrastructure. But exactly how long does the ministry think that it's going to take to mitigate the effects of these climate change, or rather, how long do you think it's going to be before we start to see some of these effects potentially mitigated?
Well, you could ask me how long is a piece of string as well, and that probably would be the answer. But this is clearly an issue, and we must not see ourselves as being alone. We are experiencing what every other country on the planet is experiencing. The study itself, if I can go back to the study, actually is done in a way that allows us to project and model out impacts going out 10, 20, 50, and 100 years. So we have an opportunity now to look at what those impacts may be and plan out how we respond in the short, medium, and long term. So we have an opportunity now, from what we know through the study, to plan and prepare. Obviously, much of what we need to do may pass the lifetimes of everybody in this room, but it's more important that we're doing them. So that's my answer to the question. This is a very short, medium, and long-term opportunity for us to prepare and address and adapt to what is happening around us in climate.
And I guess on the same topic of collaboration, does the government see any chances of potentially working with private businesses on ways that they can potentially try and help pitch into this to the mitigation of these impacts, and if so, how so?
Yes, the answer is yes to all of that, and that is the very purpose of this study. Many sectors are already responding to this issue with their own awareness, and we applaud all the efforts of business, of our charities such as the National Trust, BEST, and the Audubon Society, and all those. And let's not forget, there's been a long-term, for very many years, a call by many that we must be very sensitive to the delicate balance of our island, going back many, many decades. And so there are already many people in this. It's just that now the issue of climate change and how it's shaped has become more monumental, and we know more because of science and study and data that's collected. And so now we have the opportunity to really plan out with every sector in the community how we will approach, so that every group on the island, every resident, knows what we are doing as a community, not just the government, on to address climate change. And it's going to mean changes to our behaviors, to how we operate in life, but there's no reason that these will be so necessarily so restrictive that we can't continue to prosper, to continue to have opportunities. But if we don't respond, then it's all happening around us. There are little things we can do in our community to ensure that everyone's involved, and I think my statement was very clear that this is going to have to be a community-wide approach with every sector of the community involved. I am particularly, just as an endpoint, ensuring that younger people are very much at the forefront of this. They are no less a part of the equation, even though they perhaps aren't voting yet or haven't necessarily got control of their own resources. They are a part of the conversation because they will inherit this country and they will be the ones making the decisions. And it's important that we prepare them and they be involved so that by the time they get to the point where they're making decisions, they're as perhaps a lot more brief than any of us are in this room because they would have been involved with the process of addressing climate change for many years. And they already have taken on the approaches and strategies and have the knowledge and base of experience to deal with these issues as they go along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now welcome BBC to ask questions.
Good afternoon, Deputy Premier, Minister of Home Affairs.
Good afternoon.
I wondered, this study was commissioned in March 2022, and 200,000, I believe, was funded from the UK. Came from the UK government. Did that cover the full study, or were there any other funding came in? Could you tell us?
UK paid for the full study.
Excellent. And now it was 2.5 years to get the study. Now we're looking at a timeline on an action plan from the Climate Task Force. When have you any idea how long that's going to take?
At this point, no, but the work begins immediately. We're already going out to get our project manager to do the coordination that's needed. The ministries that are part of the task force are fully aware of what the study says, and they themselves are beginning their own internal plans on how they're going to respond. It obviously, and one of the things that we will be doing, our next steps, is to actually go to the community and talk to the community about the study, because the community is important. This is not going to be a government-exclusive initiative. We need to have the full community involved. Our private sector, who can bring incredible amount of resources and expertise to the table. Now that the study is available, their people can look at it and begin to give insights to it as well. Our very experienced foundations and charities that are involved in the environment space, they will want to look at it and bring feedback to the table. So all of that is needed to also be a part of the conversation as we shape the plans. So the plans aren't exclusively being put together by the government. There's obviously the task force, and the task force will now begin the process of engaging the community on this so that their ideas can also be incorporated.
And you just said you're looking for a project manager. Are you looking locally, or will we be looking to bring someone in for that role?
It will be put out and advertised locally and everywhere for someone locally, if they're available and qualified, can also fulfill that role.
Okay. And obviously some of these things we could say we already knew, at least anecdotally, such as the mangroves and the reefs protect our coastal lands and coastal properties are vulnerable. Power infrastructure is vulnerable. Was there anything new or surprising about this that came from this study, or is it a case of having everything in one place?
It's a case of, yes, having everything in one place and having a very focused approach to looking at these issues for the island-wide. There are often pieces of it that different, even departments of government know because of their expertise in the planning side, in the engineering side by works engineering, or let me not just miss out the fact that transport as well is involved with this, and also finance. This is going to have to be paid for over a period of time. So all these pieces on developing the appropriate financing to finance long-term investment in the sort of infrastructure needs we have. So there are often pieces. This is coordinating them all together so that there will be a unified approach to what has become a global issue. But it's impacting heavily on Bermuda. So it is bringing everything into the room, into a consolidated study that everybody will be able to look at. And we've done our best to make it digestible. I can tell you that this study is hundreds of pages of sort of, information that even I've had to take time to embrace, and we had to summarize the summaries so that we could get it down to a digestible sort of form, because it is a lot. And if you're not necessarily an environmental scientist or maybe even a financier, or somebody who's involved with natural environmental studies, or biology, or chemistry, or meteorology. You need help to understand all of this and how it all comes together. But the actions that we can take are very clear. And they are actions that we all can understand that are necessary, such as, and there are things that are being done now, but we just have to scale them up, such as the mangrove restoration, or the coral protection, and even programs that can ensure sustainable use of our natural resources, such as the use of the oceans around us, how this impacts tourism, how this impacts other aspects of Bermuda life. I think these are things that people understand because, to some degree, and I must credit the whole community, comparable to maybe other parts of the world, there's a very sense of the delicateness of the environment. There's a lot of people passionate about the environment, about nature, about agriculture, and about preserving it in Bermuda. So many people have already had that awareness, but this study brings in a lot of, the powerful tools that are available to actually show this is the steps we can take. This is what we're facing over short, medium, long term, and this is what we can do to adapt and address it.
And just personalize it for a moment, having had to look through these hundreds of pages, for you, was there anything that leapt out that either gave you a personal target or even just confirmed something that you personally feel with regards to the environment?
Well, it just knows that I have to work harder, just like everybody else, to ensure that I'm not imposing on the environment any more than I have to. That is a very difficult task, I think, for anybody, because we've kind of built up a certain type of lifestyle in Bermuda that relies on us importing everything, that relies us of almost being disposable, and having disposableness being easy, not actually understanding is that even though you take that piece of trash, that piece of plastic, or whatever it is, and put it in the trash, just because you put it there doesn't mean that you don't still have some custody on what happens to it and how it impacts the rest of the environment around us. We have to learn that we do. So just because we are disposable, because it's easy to go to the store, buy something, don't like it and throw it away and go get the next. Maybe we need to think more carefully about that process because it's impacting aspects of our environment. The fact that we have a incinerator that burns all of our trash makes it easy to just throw stuff away rather than recycle it or use it again, or maybe I'll wash that, or maybe I won't go buy plastic plates for my party tonight. I'll just make sure I'm using all the china and I just have to wash it and make sure I'm using and careful with the use of the water as well. Or maybe I'll make sure I'm buying a much more naturally based detergent. Things like that we should start thinking more carefully about. And I'm not saying that we should create more consumer demand for other things. We need to lower our usage so that we're less imposing on the environment, because that's important as well. So behavior change, I've had to, and I'm still going through it now with things I think I need to do, be more thoughtful about things I do, because I don't want that to be something that anyone believes I'm not thinking about, because I care about the environment, I care about the people around me, and that we have a sustainable country. So those are some of the things, the questions I continuously go through personally. If you talk about a personal thing around things I need to do to change, so I do that. I do it all the time. I'm not perfect at it, but I do hope that others do begin to adopt that sort of approach.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the questions. Minister, do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, I do not want by any measure for people to feel that this report is going to make you feel pessimistic. It actually is revealing and sobering, but it outlines and provides the tools to plan out our future and to make it sustainable, to make it, worthwhile for the future generations, and included and inclusive as well in this process. So I'd encourage every person to review it, look at it, see how it impacts you where you live, because some of us have residences or family live on the coastline. Bermuda's coastline is susceptible to risk. You might want to look at what happens in those areas. or even look at what's happening. It'll help you to better understand what's happening around you. So it outlines solutions as well. So I want people to use this as a tool for how we're going to plan forward. Don't use it as a tool to decide that it's fruitless. It's not. That's one thing I hope that the study makes people understand. And lastly, I really like to take my hat off to members of the Climate Action Task Force, the former PS Razi Azar, who drove this, the current PS Andrew Pettit, who continues to drive it, and the persons in the different ministries, the Department of Planning, Ms. Victoria Cordero's here from Planning, who has had a very big role in it. Planning has a lot to role, and other ministries, the Public Works Ministry, and certainly Dr. Gishard and others who are on the task force, who are crucial to this. But I certainly invite the other stakeholders in our community, the insurance industry, our local businesses, and other community organizations, all of which we'll be reaching out to engage with on this, to know they have a role to play. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Minister. That concludes the press conference. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great day.